So, most important 4 slides on this whole stinking show. This is called, oh my gosh. Quick, Brian. Psychrometric chart, right. It was a test. Psychrometric chart. And I promise I won't kill you too much with psychrometric chart stuff, but I need you to understand the difference between humidity and dew point and what it means to your structure, right? Because now we're moving from IAQ. We know IAQ, everything that gets into the air, it's not good, right? We're going to breathe that at some point. But now we come into a facilities management. Moisture is all about a facilities management issue, right? So I know on my rental units that I have, not allowed to have fish tanks, for example. They sign a 3-page, basically, disclaimer that says they have checked the house for mold. In any of the rental units here in Washington, there's a huge mold form that they have to fill in on multifamily stuff. Because mold is a huge issue. So what this says is this says that at 68 degrees, if I have 1/100th of a gram of water in the air, right? 1/100th of a gram per cubic foot in the air, I am at 70% relative humidity. Okay? Easy cheesy. 70%, it's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. We live all the time. Here in Washington, we live at 70% humidity. Outside, probably 10 months of the year. It's not that big a deal. However, 68 degrees, 1/100th of a gram. If I go to 57 degrees, that same 1/100th of a gram is now rain. Okay? So what happens, let's look at what happens to the house. So, and I'm sad to say that this infrared image on the right, this is my house, right? My house was built in the year 2000. What we're looking at here, and the funny thing about infrared is that it doesn't see the temperature of the air. Infrared doesn't care about the air temperature. It only looks at the temperature of the mass, okay? So when I look at this on the left, we're at 69.3 degrees, that's the bed. The bed's holding at 69.3 degrees, right? I've got a ductless heat pump right above there. It's putting 70-degree air out. The bed's at 69.3. Life is good on the bed. The problem is that 58.2 degrees, see that corner? Now, one fun fact about Washington, our ground temperature averages between 47 and 49, maybe 50 degrees on the western Washington side, 47 to 49 degrees, okay? So that ground temperature at 49 degrees or 48 degrees is attached to my foundation. My foundation is attached to that sole plate. That's the wood plate that goes from the foundation to the 2x6s. So in that corner, I'm at 58.2 degrees. Not a problem as long as my moisture load doesn't go above 70% in the room general, right? Because if I'm at 70% in the room at 69.3 degrees, I'm nearing 100% humidity. That's condensate. That's water forming on that corner. Now, let's think in terms of condensate, right? We go in and see our window in the house. And on that window, there's some water on the bottom of it. So that's condensate, right? That's that temperature change that's hit dew point next to the window that's pulled the moisture out of the house. So let's just hold that thought. Now, let's go to the kitchen, all right? And let's make spaghetti, okay? Remember, the house could be at 50% humidity. All well and fine. I'm boiling spaghetti in there, right? I got water steaming out of there. I got steam coming all over the place. But, I look beyond the stove. I don't see anything, right? No big deal. I'm putting that moisture. So the challenge with that is if the house is at 50% and that's its total carrying capacity, that steam that you're seeing is going somewhere to condensate, right? Because remember, if my air is at max carrying capacity for moisture, say at 50% relative to the temperature, then everything I put into the air, every bit of moisture I put into the air is going somewhere else to be distributed. It's called vapor diffusion, right? I mean, it's moving along. People ask me, well, how long does it take moisture to get from your kitchen into that corner? So, I think in terms of, you guys make coffee at your house? How long does it take the smell of coffee to get throughout your house? You know, we have a bread maker. We make a lot of bread. How long does it take the smell of bread once it starts to cook to get throughout your house? Once that thing starts to fuse into the air, it takes no time at all. So I can boil that pot dry, and if I'm at 57 degrees right there, I can come over there with a towel and I can soak every half gallon of water that I boiled out of that pot up, because what it's doing is it's being aerosolized in that kitchen, diffusing out. So there's three principles of building science. There's three principles of building science that we all have to know, right? Number one, hot goes to cold. Number two is wet goes to dry, right? Wet is going to move to dry. And number three is high pressure moves to low. All three very simple things. All three are basically occurring here, right? Hot moves to cold. That stuff's moving to that cold spot. Wet moves to dry. That wet spot is going to get even wetter, right? It's going to expand. And high pressure moves to low. By expanding that heat in that kitchen, another fun fact. I'll throw a whole bunch of fun facts out for you guys. I should throw a test on this. Do you know what the expansion rate of steam is to water? Any guesses? Come on, throw something out. 4 to 1. 4 to 1? 5,000? How about 1,500 to 1? That's the expansion rate of steam. So when, you know, the old days when you had trains, steam engines, they boil water, hit that piston, that was 1,500 to 1. That's how they were using that steam to expand that piston. So 1,500 to 1. So when I boil that water, it's 1,500, you know, popping out there. It's explosive. It runs. It moves. So it's headed for that corner. And the other thing that I wanted you to be aware of is you see the white lines that go up the wall? So that's 2x6s, right? So I've got probably R28 in that wall, and I've got 2x6s in the wall. The 2x6 has an R value of? 2x6 has an R value of 6. Wood has an R value of 1 per 1 inch. So the coldest part, right, 48 degrees outside, the coldest part of that wall is wherever the 2x6 is. If you've never heard the term jail bars, so I was in a multifamily, and this is one of our challenges. This is one of our challenges from a ventilation standpoint. I'm in a multifamily project in Yakima, Washington, and Kyle, you went there at one point, I think, didn't you? So we go in there, and we got called because they said, hey, your fans aren't working, right? Fans aren't working. I'm like, freaking fans work all the time. My fans are perfect, except for that one back there that is bad, but they're all perfect. And they said, oh, your fans aren't working. We got mold everywhere. We got water coming out of the lights. And I'm like, well, first of all, did someone put a hose in those lights, right? I mean, how do you get water out of a light? So we go there, we take a look. I'm telling you, this place was, I get there, and the guy's wearing a hazmat suit. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a problem, right off the bat. The guy's wearing a hazmat suit, and for good reason. Go inside, literally there's mold across the floor, there's mold across the sill plates, the top sills. There's mold. They have what they call jail bars. The mold, the water is condensed against the 2x6s, and now I've got mold growing up and down looking like jail bars. That's called jail bars. So what happened? I mean, we're trying to figure out what happened. So we go in there, and of course there are Whisper Green Selects, right? This should never have happened. Whisper Green Selects lighted fans. I mean, this is a good project for us. So we're going to come back to this whole VE thing. I go there. We start to disassemble the fan. We pull the light housing off. There's no variable speed. There's simply a motion sensor on there, right? So keep in mind, this is low income property, right? So, and we talk about a large population in a small footprint. There was, and this was, by the way, there was 30 of these units. I think, is that right, 30 of them? I think, yeah, 30 of them, something like that. Anyway, and they had just weatherized this project, meaning they had come in and blown in, dense packed the walls. They'd put new insulation in the ceiling, new roof. They had done a ton of work on these things and new fans. I mean, this was less than 3 or 4 months old. However, the occupant would get in there, and the occupant family would be, it would be chaos in the morning till about 8 o'clock, right? All winter long, it was chaos in the morning. There's showering, there's cooking, all sorts of stuff going on. These are migrant workers. 8 o'clock in the morning, they walk out the door, they shut all the heat off, they shut all the power off. Because they don't want to buy energy, right? They don't want to pay for the heat of the house while no one's there all day. So now it's 5 degrees outside, they've shut all the heat off in the house, and they left there thinking their fan was going to pull that moisture out. 20 minutes later, that motion sensor shut everything down, and there was no more ventilation. So all that moisture, as soon as those walls got cold, it found its own level, right? It went right to the walls and stuck on there. So that is the biggest challenge in our day right there. How do we manage the moisture so that we don't have an issue right there? I'm telling you, that's my personal thing that I have in my house. We watch the RH, because we could take all the money that all of us in this room earn right now. For the next 10 years, we could take that money and apply it to trying to heat that foundation or the earth, and we still wouldn't have enough money to heat that surface. So here's the number one. You can write this down. Here's for relative humidity. Wait for it. I got two solutions to moisture problems. One is I can heat the condensating surface, right? We can heat the surface. That the surface won't condensate if it's warm. It only condensates when it hits that dew point. So I can heat the condensating surface, or I can pull the moisture out of the air. So our strategy at Panasonic, of course, is that we want to pull the moisture out of the air. It's far less expensive, far less expensive.